Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. Imagine this. You are lying in the darkness listening to the steady, rhythmic breathing of the person who once upon a time couldn't tear her gaze away from you. A silence hangs in the room, heavy and thick, like a fog that you can almost touch. You reach out, your hand brushing her shoulder, a gesture filled with hope, yet simultaneously saturated with caution, as if you are touching an exposed wire. And in response, you receive the familiar, barely perceptible movement. She shifts away. It's subtle, just a couple of inches, but that distance feels like a canyon. Or perhaps you hear the script you have already memorized by heart. I have a headache. I'm too tired. Let's not do this today. She is always too busy, too stressed, too exhausted. But here is the harsh truth that no one will say to your face because it is too uncomfortable and destroys the comfortable illusions we cling to. The fading of her desire is not a story about the bedroom. It is not a story about physical fatigue or migraines. What happens behind closed doors is merely the loudest symptom, the final chord of a much deeper systemic problem that is eroding the foundation of your union. And if you focus only on how to restore physical closeness, you are trying to patch a deep crack in a load-bearing wall with a Band-Aid while the building is ready to collapse. Let's break down the mechanics of what is actually happening when intimacy disappears and why practically everything you intuitively do to fix the situation, the pleading, the gifts, the extra help around the house only makes it worse, driving you into a trap from which it is difficult to escape. The symptom, not the root cause. Rejection of intimacy is the most honest, most brutal form of feedback you will ever receive in a relationship. Words can be misleading. Words can soften corners. One can say, "I love you" out of habit. One can plan a joint vacation because that's what couples do. One can discuss the budget and renovations. But body language does not know how to lie. It is impossible to simulate genuine attraction, impossible to fake the spark in the eyes, and impossible to negotiate passion at a conference table using logical arguments. When a woman systematically avoids contact, she is communicating something fundamental about how she sees you, how she evaluates your relationship, and, most importantly, how she views her place next to you in the hierarchy of her life. Let's look at the story of Jason. Jason was a good acquaintance of mine, a successful manager who for 6 months kept a peculiar, agonizing diary of rejections. He recorded every no, every excuse. Every evening he fell asleep with a sense of total loneliness while lying next to a living person. When we analyzed these records, a startling picture emerged that he had refused to see. The rejections in the bedroom coincided perfectly with other seemingly insignificant changes. She stopped laughing at his jokes, which used to make her smile. She stopped asking how his day went, limiting herself to a dinner on the table. She stopped sitting next to him on the sofa when they watched movies, choosing a chair in the other corner of the room. The rejection of physical closeness was just the final domino in a long chain that had been falling for months. But Jason was too focused on the final result, on the absence of intimacy, to notice the beginning of the global collapse of their connection. Temporary versus chronic. How to tell the difference. Here, it is critically important to draw a line that many men miss while in a state of stress. There is a massive difference between a temporary slump and chronic alienation. Life happens to everyone. Work stress, health issues, family crisis, caring for small children, or aging parents. These are all real factors that lower energy levels. If your partner is grieving the loss of a loved one or going through a difficult period in her career, her lack of interest is a normal, healthy reaction of the organism to overload. In such a situation, demanding attention is a manifestation of selfishness. But here is how to unmistakably distinguish one from the other. A person who wants to be with you, but temporarily, cannot physically or emotionally, will look for ways to maintain the thread of connection. Jennifer, a woman with serious health issues, told me how embarrassed and pained she felt about her loss of mood. She initiated hugs. She planned joint evenings without any intimate context, just to be close. She spoke openly with her husband about her feelings and visited specialists. She was trying for the sake of the relationship. She was fighting so that we would not disappear. Compare this to a situation where a partner says, "I'm so tired, I have no energy. I'm just falling off my feet," and 5 minutes later you see her enthusiastically messaging in group chats with friends, laughing at videos on her phone, or discussing weekend plans until 2 inches the morning. In the first case, it is a shared challenge you solve together as a team. In the second, it is an excuse, the goal of which is to keep you at a safe distance. Fatigue that magically disappears as soon as it comes to entertainment, hobbies, or virtual life is not fatigue. It is a choice. It is a prioritization where you have ended up at the bottom of the list. Total shutdown. The signs you ignore. When a woman closes off physically, watch closely for what else disappears from your life. This process is rarely isolated. Pay attention to micro-touches. Those casual brushes when you pass each other in a narrow kitchen. Does she pull away or does she lean in? Spontaneous hugs when you are watching TV. Kisses that last longer than 1 second and are not a performative ritual when leaving the house. A peck on the cheek without taking eyes off the phone. If she has stopped even holding your hand on a walk, the problem is not in the intimacy. The problem is that your physical presence in her personal space is unpleasant to her. Her body is rejecting you on an unconscious level. Another powerful marker is the contribution to the household and the emotional background. A loving person experiencing temporary difficulties with desire often tries to compensate for this in other areas. Feeling guilt, she might cook your favorite dinner, organize a surprise, show care for your comfort, buy you a new shirt, but when a total burnout of feelings occurs, everything disappears. I counseled old Michael, whose wife had avoided closeness for 8 months, but that was just the tip of the iceberg. He refused to see. She stopped cooking for him, stopped maintaining order in their shared space, stopped working on shared goals, and spoke to him only about household logistics. Who picks up the kids, music, when to pay the bills, snorts, and what to buy at the supermarket. She was present physically, but emotionally, she had already packed her bags and left the relationship. Michael was living with a ghost of a wife, with a roommate who simply shared living space with him. Intimacy as currency and a tool of influence. There is also a more complex manipulative side to this situation that is not spoken of aloud. The denial of closeness as a tool of control and power. Some people, consciously or not, use access to the body as a lever to manage their partner. They quickly understand a simple formula. The more you need, the more manageable you are. Intimacy turns into a commodity, a reward for good behavior, a carrot on a stick. This dynamic often follows a predictable script. In the beginning of the relationship, before commitments were locked in, contact was frequent, vibrant, full of enthusiasm and experimentation. But as soon as guarantees appeared, a stamp in the passport, a mortgage, the birth of children, the door closed. Not because desire faded naturally due to age or habit, but because closeness was transactional from the start. It was a means to achieve a goal, stability, status, family, and when the goal is achieved, the means no longer need to be used with the same intensity. The biggest mistake men make here is trying to earn or buy favor. Steve, a successful architect, spent a fortune on gifts trying to bring the warmth back into his wife's eyes. Expensive jewelry, trips to resorts, fulfilling all her whims. The paradox was that the more he gave, the colder and more demanding she became. Why? Because with every action, every bribe, he broadcast a message that killed attraction. I am not good enough on my own. My personality has no value, so I must buy your attention. He tried to purchase with resources what, in healthy relationships, is a natural, free exchange of energy between loving people. He turned himself into a sponsor, and sponsors are used, not desired. Emotional starvation and the destruction of self-esteem. The psychological impact of constant rejection on a man is devastating and often underestimated by society. Emotional and physiological needs are intertwined much more closely than we are used to thinking. For a man, closeness is not just physiology or release. It is a way to feel accepted, alive, chosen, one of us. When you are systematically rejected, you don't just lose pleasure. You receive daily monotonous confirmation of your uselessness. Men begin to doubt everything, losing their core. Maybe I've become unattractive. Maybe I'm a loser. Maybe I smell bad. This insecurity, like poison, seeps into all areas of life. Career, friendships, parenting. A man becomes twitchy, irritable, or conversely apathetic. The metaphor of basic needs is very accurate here. Imagine someone fully controls the access to water in your home. You are given just enough to quench acute thirst and not die, but never enough to drink your fill. And then this person is genuinely surprised and even angry when you complain about thirst. You only care about water. You're obsessed with water, they say. This is a classic bait and switch, a form of gaslighting, creating an artificial scarcity and then blaming the partner for thinking too much about that scarcity. The understanding partner trap. The biggest mistake good, well-mannered men make is excessive understanding and patience. The more you calmly and with a smile accept rejections, the more rejections you will receive in the future. The more you suppress your legitimate needs to avoid conflict, to not rock the boat and be convenient, the faster you become invisible to your woman. Your patience is perceived not as the virtue of a saint, but as the weakness of a person who has no alternatives. I have seen men who waited for months, even years, hoping that the situation would magically improve if they behaved perfectly. They became ideal roommates in their own marriage. They took on all the household chores. They became a shoulder to cry on. They believed that their loyalty and aestheticism would be rewarded with the return of passion. But reality is cruel. No one feels animal attraction to a doormat. No one wants someone who agrees to neglect. If your behavior shows that you can be treated this way, that you aren't going anywhere, you will be treated exactly this way. Redirection of energy. The third wheel. Sometimes the reason for the cold is banal and hurtful. Energy does not disappear into nowhere. It is redirected. When closeness, attention, heart-to-heart talks, and emotional involvement disappear simultaneously, it often means the flow has gone into another channel. If she isn't spending emotions on you, she is spending them on something or someone else. And this isn't necessarily physical infidelity. An emotional attachment on the side, a virtual romance, or even an obsession with a career or hobby can be even more destructive to a marriage than a one-time mistake. Pay attention to signs that are often ignored. Sarah suddenly started taking intense care of herself, joined a gym, bought new clothes, beautiful lingerie that you never see on her in the bedroom. She doesn't let her phone out of her hands, sets passwords, turns its screen down. She smiles, looking at the screen, but changes her face, becomes serious or annoyed when you enter the room. She stays late for business, has new friends or projects that you are not privy to. The refusal of closeness in this case happens not because she has no feminine energy. The energy is there, and there is a lot of it. It is simply not addressed to you. You have become an obstacle, not an object of desire. You cannot negotiate passion to logic error. Many men, especially those with a technical or logical mindset, look for a secret key or algorithm. They think that if they choose the right words, present valid arguments, make the right gesture, or find the perfect moment for a conversation, everything will return. They seek a logical, rational solution to a deeply emotional, instinctive problem. But attraction is not an equation to be solved. It is a response. It is a reaction to a stimulus. It is an answer to who you are, what energy you broadcast, and what position you occupy in space. The only working solution is the paradoxical move of stopping the attempt to solve the problem head-on. Brian, one of my colleagues, completely changed his tactics after a year of fruitless attempts to please his wife. He stopped initiating contact. He stopped asking, "What happened? And why are you so cold?" He stopped trying to earn approval. Instead, he started getting up early in the morning and exercising. He returned to his old hobbies, music, and hiking. He started meeting friends without her. He began living his own separate, interesting life. 3 months later, the situation began to change dramatically. Not because Brian found magic words, but because he became a person again. He stopped being a needy, clingy petitioner and became an autonomous man. He created space between them in which desire could arise again, because attraction requires distance. Fire needs air. If you smother your partner with your care and constant presence, there is simply nowhere for the flame to catch fire. The question is not why she avoids closeness with you specifically today. The question is deeper. Why does she not value you enough to consider your needs important in principle? In healthy relationships where partners are equal, temporary difficulties are discussed openly with empathy and a desire to find a solution. In relationships where you are perceived as a resource, a function, an ATM, or a driver, your desires carry no weight. If the problem is ignored, if your attempts to talk hit a wall of indifference, sarcasm, or aggression, that's all you ever want. Consequences must follow. Not threats of divorce, not tantrums with smashing dishes, but natural changes in the balance. If you do not receive emotional return, you reduce your investments. You stop giving your time, attention, resources, and warmth into the void. You begin to mirror her attitude. If she behaves like a neighbor, you also behave like a polite but distant neighbor. This is not revenge. This is self-respect and energy conservation. Many women, unfortunately, over time begin to see the partner as an instrument of stability, not a man. Once the goal is achieved, the house is built, comfort is established, status is secured, the role of the man is fulfilled, intimacy was just a demo version phase. You turn into a reliable, useful household appliance. It works. It doesn't break. It is necessary, but it inspires absolutely no thrill. No one feels passion for a refrigerator, even if it is very reliable. Friendship is a dead end for marriage. I love you, but as a friend, we are family. You are my best friend. Have you heard this? It is a warning signal sounding like a siren. Some couples try to build a union exclusively on friendship, partnership, and respect, completely ignoring biology. They lose polarity. Relationships need contrast, the attraction of plus and minus. When you become too similar, too comfortable, too predictable for each other, erotic energy disappears. You become brother and sister. Worse, you become roommates, where one, usually the man, provides for the other, creates safety, but is deprived of the right to a full male life. Men often agree to this format, thinking that strong friendship is better than loneliness or divorce. They are afraid to lose the family and agree to the role of a silent companion, a eunuch serving the queen. This is the slow fading of the male personality leading to deep depression. When hope becomes poison, if within 6 months, despite your active attempts to fix everything, conversations, self-improvement, care, the situation does not change. Know this. It is unlikely to change on its own. If a person systematically shows you through actions, not words, that they do not want closeness with you, believe them. Believe the actions. Hope in such situations is often a form of denial of reality, a way to delay the inevitable painful decision. You need to ask yourself an honest, brutal question. Are you ready to live like this for the rest of your life? Another 10, 20, 30 years? Many men think it is too late to change anything, that they are old. The commitments, mortgages, and children hold them tight. But the experience of millions of people shows life without closeness, without feeling like a needed and desired man, destroys the internal state, health, and psyche faster than any changes, even the most radical ones. Sometimes starting over at 40 or 50 inches, a small rented apartment, but with a sense of freedom and self-dignity, is better than slowly fading inside a big, rich, but cold house. Sometimes relationships simply end. They have an expiration date. No one is to blame. The stage is simply past. What once brought joy and fulfillment now brings heaviness and toxicity. And true strength lies not in holding on to what is leaving at any cost, clinging to the past but in acknowledging the new reality and allowing both to move on to happiness separately. What to do right now? The action plan. Stop looking for the reason only in yourself, engaging in endless self-criticism. Stop asking, what did I do wrong? Start asking, does this suit me, and what am I willing to do about it? The path forward always begins with a focus on yourself. It is a universal cure. Become the best version of yourself, but not for her, so she comes to her senses, but for yourself, because you are worth it. Take care of the health you may have neglected. Start building a career or business with renewed vigor. Find interests that make your eyes light up. There are only 2 possible outcomes here, and both are wins for you. Either your partner will see in you a new, strong, independent person, feel the fear of loss, and interest will return naturally, or you will outgrow this relationship and be fully ready physically and mentally to meet a woman who will value you properly, for whom you won't need to try to be desired. In either case, you win because you reclaim yourself. The standards you accept determine the treatment you receive. If you agree to a union without closeness, silently nodding, that is exactly what you will have. If you consider mutual attraction, passion, and warmth a mandatory condition for marriage, you will either restore it here through strict boundaries and changes, or you will find it elsewhere. Remember, you are not alone. Countless men, millions around the world, live in quiet desperation, thinking they are the only ones facing this problem, that something is wrong with them. This is a topic that is shameful to discuss, a topic kept silent. Do not let this shame isolate you. You deserve to be desired. Not just tolerated, not just useful around the house, not just a good father, but specifically a desired man, and you have the power to change your reality. You are not a hostage to the situation until you agree to put on the handcuffs and hand over the key. Share your opinion or story in the comments. How did you realize the situation required change? What helped you? A decisive conversation. Leaving or working on yourself. Your experience could be the sign for another man who is looking for answers in the dark right now. Let's discuss this honestly. Man to man, the choice is simple. Stay in the sweet fog or open your eyes. If you are ready for the truth, whatever it may be, welcome to the channel. Click subscribe and see you in the new videos.